What's up, everybody? Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Aries alongside D Money, and this is our daily show talking transfer portal, recruiting, coaching movement all across the world of college football. And even though the portal is coming to a close officially here in a few days as enrollment across the country ends for the semester, there's still a lot of stuff happening, some major coaching moves to talk about as Bill Belichick is involved in this move that we'll be talking about here in a second. The top interior offensive lineman is off the board now, headed to Oregon. So a bunch of stuff to talk about today, D.
Yeah, no question about it. It doesn't stop, man. That's why we did this show, because there's so much news every single day, whether it's portal, coaching changes, recruiting, that you just need to sit back and look and say who's going where, or else you show up there in camp and you're like, who are these guys? I just saw them wearing other colors last year. So that's what this is about. Still a lot going on, and including the biggest teams. You know, these are teams that are going to be competing for a national championship, making moves that affect their top line players like Oregon, which we'll talk about. I mean, Oregon made a move today that will impact their offensive line in a major way. Probably their best offensive lineman next year just got added today. So these are major moves, major programs being affected, and you know, lesser known programs making moves to try to step up and be the next Arizona State, Boise State, Southern Methodist to really make that jump. So a lot to get to, a lot of fun going on.
We'll start with North Carolina, though, as these moves really go hand in hand, starting with the hire of Armand Hawkins as defensive backs coach. And this is a guy who worked under Steve Belichick last year at Washington. He worked in the secondary, was an analyst in the secondary, and worked in the recruiting. He's looked at as one of the top up-and-coming coaches at that position in the country, really thought of highly in the recruiting world as well. So their familiarity there, obviously, with Steve Belichick, like we said. And then the other move we'll talk about here is that Peyton Waters, a safety from Washington, who was a four-star recruit coming out, is going to be transferring to UNC. He played in all 13 games for Washington last year, and coming over now with his coach, Armand Hawkins, as well as Steve Belichick. But this is a guy who, again, who was a former four-star and played in all 13 games.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is Bill Belichick saying, I am not just going to be focused on the Southeast, the Atlantic coast, the Mid-Atlantic. I am going after players all across the country. And a guy like Armand Hawkins, of course, there's a connection there through Steve Belichick. This is somebody who is from California, coached at Arizona, coached at Colorado, coached at USC, and of course, Washington. So he's a West Coast guy opening up all of that recruiting area. And the first proof of that is Peyton Waters, who himself is from Los Angeles, California, 6'1", 182, former four-star player. Watching the film, you could see, just from watching his high school stuff, this is a very long, athletic guy. He looks the part. You look at his, just going through his high school production before we get to the college side. Top 20 safety in the class of 24. So this was a freshman last year, a true freshman last year, coming in with that blue chip pedigree. And then in high school, 1,000-yard rusher or 1,000-yard receiver 2 years in a row. On defense, 64 tackles, 2 picks, 2 fumble returns as a senior, 3 punt return TDs, a kickoff return TD. Played basketball, track and field, 11.35 in the 100, which, you know, for a guy with his size, is pretty good. And also high jump 6'2". Go fast forward to his freshman year playing under Steve Belichick. He played in all 13 games, only 5 tackles, really more of a special teams player, 126 snaps on special teams. But then you go and look at some of the quotes, right, from when he was playing in camp and showing out as a true freshman. Of course, Kamori House, his teammate at Washington, a linebacker, another guy that really showed out at Washington and came over with Belichick to North Carolina. So here's a quote from 247 back when House and Waters were starring in spring for Washington, 2 new North Carolina defenders. This is a quote. I think it's fair to say that Peyton Waters and Kamori House were the surprise true freshman skill position players on the other side of the ball. They just didn't look like kids. They didn't act like the lights were too bright or the stage was too big. So you also hear Jed Fish, the head coach of Washington, single out both of these players, saying we are going to see great things out of Kamori House and Peyton Waters as 2 very promising young players on defense. This is in October. So 2 very young pieces being coached by Steve Belichick and Armand Hawkins, who again both came over. Take those players. Now you're not just renting players at North Carolina. They're going to be in and out. These are young players with promise, with upside that you know because your defensive staff coach these guys coming all the way from the West Coast to North Carolina, and hopefully building blocks of the defense and something that's built to last and not just for this particular season.
Yeah, and just looking at the huddle highlights, the high school clips there for Peyton Waters, a lot of corner being played by him. So seems like someone with a lot of ability and coverage, and obviously a calling card to Belichick defenses is guys who can play all over the board.
You got Rory Blake saying Washington will also lose another. So potentially some inside info here in the group chat, live chat. We appreciate all you guys joining us and providing the insights. So listen, Rory, if we get that news, if we get that notification, we'll cover that next transfer and we'll give you the shout out there. But anytime you lose a defensive coordinator and a defensive back coach, you could see some attrition there. Washington really, to me, is I don't say an ascendant program because they were in the championship 2 years ago, but they are going in the right direction after a total reset. So we'll see where that program goes. Obviously, defensively, losing two very, very young players with House, and Peyton Waters. So we'll see how it goes at UNC. But I just like the fact that, look, it's like you saw Colorado, right? There were so many players that were there just for a season, just to turn it around fast. You need to build on almost two parallel tracks, right? And these are guys that are theoretically going to be there for the long haul. And look, if Steve Belichick is the heir apparent and he's the head coach at UNC in 2-3 years, these could be his seniors, right? Guys that he coached when he started his defensive coordinator career over there on the West Coast. So 2 names to watch. But yeah, Waters, man, just watching that film, good looking player, good size, good athleticism. You see him being a safety. And look, what's Bill Belichick's favorite position on the field? Safety, right? That's the guys he spends the most time on, just like Nick Saban. Those guys are really an extension of him on the field. He loves having smart, versatile safeties. He drafted a ton. You think about McCourty's and some of the guys that he's had there at New England. Could this be the next one that is the coach on the field for the Belichicks? We'll see, but it's going to be fun to watch his career as he progresses.
We have a comment here from Sergeant Moorhugh saying, off topic, but supposedly Texas State in talks to join the Pac-12. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
they're in the Sun Belt now.
Yeah, 100%. That'd be fun to watch. It's the Pac. I mean, it's amazing trying to keep track of all these things. I wonder when it's all said and done if we just rebuild the Pac 10 or 12, whatever. Once we get these true super conferences and say these are the West Coast teams, and you go back to what it started with. But yeah, look, Texas State. Obviously, Texas not necessarily on the Pacific, but that's always an interesting program that does different things offensively. And takes chances. And maybe the Pac, whatever number you attach to it in the future, is that place where you have these kind of cool programs that do things differently schematically and make it worth watching in the future. But I also got a question here from Brandon about a program that we are very familiar with here in Miami, which is Florida International, right? He's asking FIU, anything on FIU? They've had a very good portal season. So I'm pulling up here FIU. And just taking a look at some of their commitments. We love Willie Simmons. I thought that was a great pickup coming from FAMU, just a fit, right? So some of these players that FIU's picked up, and these are guys that we have a lot of familiarity with from when they were high school kids, right? So AJ Allen, this was a running back for Miami, got caught in the shuffle. You had David Martinez, who's an NFL back, Senior Bowl invitee, 1,000-yard rusher, star. Not going to play over him. Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, 2 top 10 backs in their classes, local guys. He wasn't able to get over the hump with those guys, but look, not a lot of people were. Those are very talented backs. When A.J. Allen played for the University of Miami, he performed, had a very long touchdown run early in the season in non-conference. I want to say it was against Ball State, and played well in the Louisville win. Crucial snaps there. Kind of your classic back, hard worker, runs hard, has patience, has some explosiveness. I think A.J. Allen for FIU, for basically any non-Power 4 team, is a steal because this is a Power 4 back all day. So I think that's a great pickup. Also, just some more local guys that we have some familiarity with. Websley Etienne from Arkansas State. Big, long defensive back. Was a video, like YouTube kind of guy. Had some success there. Got some fame there, but long, athletic defensive back with legitimate size.
Lamont Green Jr.
Yep.
That's a name from the past. His dad was a great linebacker coming out. Was he the number 1 recruit in the country at a high school coming out years ago? Yeah. So stud, played at Florida State, and his son was at Florida State as well. I think was just a bit lean, right? And I think FIU, if he put some weight on, it could be a nice pickup for them.
Yeah, good player down here in high school. And I could see that. He hasn't had enough time really to see what he is or what he is not. Florida State was really a messy situation there on defense. So you land him coming home. I think he could definitely produce for FIU. Dante Anderson, another FSU transfer, who's originally from South Florida, from Miami-Dade County at Homestead. He's someone with some talent. You could see him having some success. He's added weight since he was in high school. Antonio Tripp, Miami transfer, a little undersized for what Miami's doing on the offensive line. You see Miami's offensive line, arguably the best in the country, certainly right up there with Notre Dame. So not easy to get in there when you're 6'3" like Tripp is, but Tripp then makes the move right across the street to FIU. He's originally from Baltimore, so he's not a local kid, but he's already here, having been in Miami. So I think he'll find a good home there. And really just look at what FIU is doing. You're taking local kids coming back, which is, a natural fit. And this is historically the best talent pool in America in South Florida. But you're also taking guys that maybe not are local from high school, but are at Miami and want more playing time. And you can get those guys. So you're benefiting two ways. You're benefiting from Miami, the University of Miami, and then also local guys coming back, plus whatever you recruit. So I think if you live in this area, if you're Willie Simmons, he's added, some really the Ed Pata from the University of Miami. He's added nice coaches to the staff that have local ties. I could see this being a formula that if you coach these guys up, again, Willie Simmons had a lot of success at FAMU. You coach these guys up, you're going to have a steady supply of talent from just local guys coming home, local guys staying home, and then Miami transfers that don't want to leave the city but want more playing time.
So we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Oregon had a massive pickup, and that is Emmanuel Pregnon, who was the #1 interior offensive lineman in the portal. And this was an interesting one when he entered the portal in the first place, D, because was at Wisconsin and then plays at USC. USC was under the impression he was probably going pro after this year, but he enters the portal and, Colorado was in the mix because he's a guy who's originally from Denver. Oregon now, though, landing the #1 interior lineman in the portal, and then the #1 tackle in Isaiah World. So, I mean, at a position like offensive line where you're losing some proven players, not sure you can really do much better than Dan Lanning and the Ducks.
Yeah, this was the best interior lineman in the portal by far. Probably the best lineman in the portal. Would it be fair to say there, Pete? I think he was the best lineman in the portal. You look at the quality of Oregon's class. We talk about just pure quality, man. First of all, you get Evan Stewart back, right? So you're not going to get much better in the portal at receiver than Evan Stewart. So you bring him back, right? You bring back Dante Moore. There's always been rumors about Quinn Ewers still. You hear rumors about him potentially being in the mix there, a quarterback. I could see them going with Dante Moore at this point just because of his talent, what he's shown, being in the situation he's in. Mekhi Hughes, the #1 running back in the portal. You get the #1 safety in the portal with Thieneman from Purdue. These are proven, highly productive players who are going to come in and play at a championship level immediately. And then Pregnon, he's a guy that we all thought was going to the pros. I think USC thought he was going to the pros. Then when he decided not to go to the pros, they assumed he was coming back to USC. So for a guy like this to not only not go to the pros, but then go to a team that you compete with in the same conference, in the same coast, that's got to hurt a lot if you're USC. Of course, if you're Oregon, I think back to that Ohio State game, the second Ohio State game. Their offensive line didn't perform as well as maybe people hoped, particularly on the tackles. The right tackle, Cornelius, had a really, really tough time with Ohio State's defensive ends who are absolutely unreal. But the offensive line as a whole, I thought, could have been better, right? We've seen Oregon play better up front historically, certainly the last 5 years. So I think a guy like Pregnon gets you back to that. He's older. He's extremely talented. Originally from Wyoming, was one of the hot ticket items in the portal when he first went to USC. And he's originally from Denver, Colorado. So, people thought maybe Colorado would be in here in this mix, but Oregon, I guess close enough, but certainly in the championship mode said, we are going after the absolute best players in the portal. You are one of them, and you're going to increase our quality, which as we sit here today, and I'm just pulling up the numbers, I think they're by far the #1 team in the portal as far as average player rank. So for those that don't follow the portal as close from a ranking perspective, there's the total portal rankings, which kind of an evolving process, still figuring out how to rank these guys. It's not as easy as high school recruits because they have different years of eligibility, et cetera. But you rank the guys in the portal, and then you have the total portal class rankings, which sometimes incorporate the amount of players you bring in, right? So teams like LSU, Texas Tech, Ole Miss that are bringing in a ton of players in the portal. They're high up in the rankings when you talk about the total class rankings. But Oregon, which only has 9 players in the portal, has by far the highest quality as far as 4-star players in the portal. And the names we're talking about, I mentioned Mekhi Hughes, the running back from Tulane, 1,000-yard rusher 2 times in a row, proven. Manuel Pregnon, probably the best offensive lineman in the portal, big-time guard, could have been in the pros. Bear Alexander, super talented defensive tackle, has been around the block, but still has big-time interest. Jamari Johnson, the guy I know you love, Pete, big tight end from Louisville. He'll play right away. Isaiah World, who we did a podcast on, big. I mean, you couldn't draw up the frame better at tackle coming in from Nevada. He's played a ton of football, and I think there's still some upside when you just watch his frame. NFL talent all day. And we mentioned Dylan Thieneman, the all-world safety from Purdue. He'll be an instant all-Big Ten type performer. I mean, he's already been playing at that level in the Big Ten. He'll be an instant all-Big Ten performer for Oregon. So quality-wise, you cannot do any better than they've done. You bring in Dakari Moore, who's going to play right away. You bring back Evan Stewart, who a lot of people thought might be going pro. This offense, let's just talk about the offense. Your running game should be better. I think Hughes is going to give you more production. You know, you got from James this year. Maybe we'll see, but I think Hughes is just a little bit better overall runner. Certainly been very productive. Offensive line, you know, you're losing Connerly, you're losing guys, but you've been recruiting at a high level. Prignon's going to help quite a bit, and we'll see what Isaiah World can do on the outside. But then receiving, right? You lose Tez, but bringing back Stewart, and then you also have Malik Benson, kind of your deep threat from Florida State and originally from Alabama. But man, Dakari Moore is a true freshman. I've used the Jamar Chase comp. He's going to play right away. Dante Moore is going to have plenty of options to throw to in the running game with a guy like Pregnon leading the way from Mekhi Hughes should remain strong, Pete. So, I mean, I don't know what you're seeing with Oregon, but to me, it looks like they're going to be right there in the mix to win the Big Ten this year.
I agree 100%. I think that they're building that roster, even though they're still going hard in the portal. They're building that roster from the foundation up. And Brandon just commented something that I was going to bring up here when you were finished, and he's asking about Deion Sanders and the Cowboys. I have to wonder here, not to get into the whole discussion about that, because I think Deion has a whole lot to think about, right, with this opportunity potentially on the table with the Cowboys. But I'm wondering, because Pregnon being a guy from Denver, and he just made this decision this morning. There was rumblings a few days ago when we first talked about this, that Colorado was the favorite there. I'm wondering, this news broke overnight. Deion has acknowledged it. If that has played into his decision-making process at all.
Let me tell you, if Deion does go to the Cowboys, obviously everyone in the portal in Colorado can jump right back in the portal. To me, the name that jumps right to the top, and I think if you're Oregon, you just lost Josh Connerly, your tackles got beat anyways against Ohio State. Jordan Seaton immediately becomes probably the highest profile player in the portal, probably the highest ranked player in the portal at the offensive line position, ahead of who you just signed in Pregnon. So Jordan Seaton jumps in the portal. And we're kind of skipping some steps here, but this is what happens when the dominoes start falling. What does the Jordan Seaton sweepstakes look like? Because I think Oregon, for a left tackle like that, this plug and play replacing your first round pick, second round pick, and Josh Connerly, I think that is a very, very intriguing fit for a team that's trying to win a championship. And look,
and as Canes Cats Heat 305 said, it was a tough battle for him coming out of high school.
So would it be a situation where, you know, they've been rumored for Quinn Ewers. So I'm not saying that's valid or not, but Quinn Ewers is going to cost a lot of money if he does come back to college. Would you rather just build a wall in front of a Dante Moore, right? You have Pregnon already, but then you add a Seaton at left tackle. Now you're really protecting Dante Moore and saying, hey, you are our guy. You're going to be throwing it to Evan Stewart, Dakari Moore. You're going to be handing it off to Mekhi Hughes. You're going to have this line in front of you. You don't need all this other stuff. That to me is a very, very, very intriguing potential fit for a Jordan Seaton if the dominoes start falling in Colorado. There's a change at the coaching position. But if it doesn't happen, just with Pregnon alone, you've done a heck of a lot to protect your quarterback, because that pressure from up the middle is even more problematic sometimes than the pressure coming off the edge.
So from a guy that USC loses to someone that they've added, and that is Prince Strachan, wide receiver from Boise State. High upside wide receiver because he only started playing football in 2019. His brother is NFL receiver Mike Strachan. So they're from the Bahamas, and this is a guy who had 25 receptions this year for Boise State, 6'5", and can jump out of the building. I think the fact that he was so late to football and seems like there's a lot of development still to go makes him an intriguing guy. Miami was interested here. He visited Miami a few days ago as well, which obviously would have been an easy choice for him considering Bahamas is right there. And we've here in South Florida, everyone goes to the Bahamas, seems like multiple times a year. So that would have been an easy choice for him. But he is going to USC, a place that has lost a lot of receiver. Deuce Robinson going to Florida State, Zachariah Branch, different type of receiver, more of a slot guy, obviously. But Strachan is someone who potentially over there with Lincoln Riley and that offense, Jaden Maiava, could really see his ceiling rise.
Yeah, I think a very seamless fit as far as a Deuce Robinson replacement, similar body type, similar kind of upside, similar production last year, really. When you compare Boise State, what he did there to what Deuce did at USC. And again, I think there's still some upside. Bahamas is sort of uncharted territory. You mentioned he's only been playing since 2019. There are so many athletes in the Bahamas. You see him even in baseball starting to get signed. A guy like Jazz Chisholm going to, the New York Yankees. But all sports, Bahamians are really starting to play. It's amazing. A lot of people don't DeAndre Ayton. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the players that come out of South Florida are actually of Bahamian descent. So if you ask me who's the best college football player in the country for 2025, I would say Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith, his cousin Geno Smith, the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, they are actually of Bahamian descent. So there's a lot of players of Bahamian descent that maybe weren't born in the island, but certainly keep close ties to the island. When we go out to football games down here in South Florida, they're serving conch out of the food trucks, right? That just shows you the link between Bahamian culture and South Florida football culture. Of course, strained originally from Fort Pierce, which is a little north of here in South Florida, but southern-ish Florida, making the trek all the way to the West Coast. And I think the upside, you mentioned his brother with the Commanders. He had 4 catches for 40 yards in the championship or in the playoff game against Penn State. I think the upside with this guy is it's going in the right direction, the trend. He's going to get the ball from Jordan Maiava, who's a guy that loves to throw the ball down the field. If you're USC, you really want to increase your yards per attempt. That's sort of priority number one for USC and Lincoln Riley. Can we start driving the ball downfield? We couldn't protect long enough to drive it down the field last year. We were dicking and dunking with all of our quarterbacks, whether it was Moss or Maiava. Can we get the ball further down the field? And you look at some of the names they've added, Waymon Jordan, we did a video on him, the running back from junior college, super talented guy. Also, Eli Sanders, a productive running back from New Mexico. So that's been taken care of to an extent. You've added some offensive linemen, but I think with Pregnon, you still got a lot of work to do at that position. Also, you lose Mason Murphy to Auburn. So maybe offensive line, you'd like to see a little more there from USC's transfer portal class. But at the receiver position, this helps replace what you lost with Deuce Robinson.
Before the USC fans get on, you called him Jordan Maiava. Jaden Maiava.
I know. I'm getting old. If you're new to the show, this happens about 4 times a show.
Which reminds me, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have almost 50 on live with us. Appreciate all of you. We got over 1,000 subs yesterday, which thanks to you guys have been helping us grow tremendously here. So we've been going live every day, man. It's been great connecting with you guys, and we do the Canes Insight show, but it's cool to connect to other fan bases across the country as well.
And it's funny, every morning we're like, hey, is there gonna be enough for a show? And then in an hour, we get the whole agenda list set up because there's just so much going on in college football. Very easy to find important stuff to talk about. So, let's switch gears to a program, Pete, that is very interesting to us because of the change in head coach. More things change and more things stay the same. Rich Rodriguez back in West Virginia. It just feels right. Yeah, Pat McAfee going crazy on TV. It just a lot of good things happening with the West Virginia program, a program that, I've watched since the old Big East days, right? And it's always been a program that punched above its weight and that was fun to watch, particularly in the Rich Rod era, and how unique they were on offense, their ability to beat, bigger programs on big stages. It was just awesome to see. So him returning is really cool. Biggest question, that quarterback spot. How is he going to find his quarterback of the future that does the unique things that he wants to get done at quarterback, same as it was in Jacksonville State, where he just came from, and of course in West Virginia back in the day. You've got a couple lefties that can do work. Nico Marchiol, Khalil Wilkins. You have added Jalen Henderson from Texas A&M, and now another quarterback in the mix to play this unique style of quarterback and offense, and that is Max Brown, originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Florida Gators vet, most recently at Charlotte. So, Pete, what can you tell us about Max Brown and his fit here at West Virginia?
Well, look, he's a guy who didn't have great numbers last year, as you see there, 561, 3 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. But you said it. You talk about a guy who has a really interesting athletic background, having played baseball at Florida on a team that made the College World Series. His dad played in the NFL, Corey Brown, with the Falcons and the 49ers. So he has the athletic background. Obviously, the numbers weren't great last year, but coming into a situation with the type of athlete that he is, that you would assume that Rich Rod is a better fit for the type of athlete that he is. Now, quarterback competition, it's not like he's walking in and winning this job, outright. It's not like he's being anointed as the guy, but I think this is a bit of a Moneyball pickup if you're West Virginia and you're Rich Rod, right? I think there's value in getting this guy that obviously has this athletic upside. He has the size. A couple programs that he's been at hasn't worked out at, but I think Rich Rod is probably banking on the fact that he sees his skill set and says, man, I can probably get more out of this guy than these other places he's been.
100%. And look, the way Rich Rod uses his quarterbacks, they take a pounding. So you almost have to treat it like running backs in that you need to have multiple bodies at this position, right? You can't just treat it like it's Peyton Manning and the backup is a nobody, right? Because these guys get hurt. They run the ball like running backs. Just going to Jacksonville State, his quarterback ran the ball more than anybody. So this is what he does, what he's always done, and what he continues to do. So I think in the future he'll recruit to that position. But for right now, you're adding bodies, you're adding guys that can compete, see who fits. And if you are left with multiple guys, you may use multiple guys just because of injury by running these quarterbacks so much. But, Nico's got the he's probably the favorite, right? Heading into spring. It wasn't a sure thing if he was going to return, ultimately decides to return. But it's going to be interesting to see who can replace Garrett Green and what the direction of this program is. I think long-term, when Rich Rodriguez really gets settled, this should be a program that recruits the absolute best running quarterbacks in the country, because there aren't that many running quarterback programs in America anymore. There used to be a lot. Now, how many programs will you say major in running quarterbacks? It's just not something you see as often as you used to. So if you're West Virginia, you say, listen, this is what we do. We're not going to try to make you something you're not. We'll try to hopefully you can develop as a passer, because I'm sure a lot of these guys have NFL aspirations. But look, we want to play.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is going to be the tough sell.
But look, these might be guys that other teams are trying to recruit as wide
other
receivers.
positions, and they want to play that spot, like Nick Marshall back in the day.
Right. So you could get guys that are athletic, run first quarterbacks with size, and say, listen, you will have a chance to play quarterback here. You might have a chance to play early at quarterback here. These other schools are going to try to take you and make you a DB or a wide receiver, where you can play quarterback here with the ball in your hands. We'll have you do what you do best. And look, the only way to develop as a passer is by passing, right? So being a quarterback and getting snaps helps your development, as opposed to just being a fourth stringer where they're trying to make you a pro style guy. So I think the sell for that kind of player is there. And if you're not, who you're recruiting against, UCF doesn't even have a running quarterback this year with Gus Malzahn, who, by the way, where's he at now? So, the options to be a true running quarterback, I think, are limited. And this is one of those programs where you can recruit these guys. Max Brown, is he that kind of runner? I don't think so. I think he's more probably just an athletic body with some upside you get in the room. But I think going forward, you can attract premium athletes by not changing their position.
So a program we talk about pretty much, it seems like, every day here, and that's because they've been very active in the portal, trying to rebuild this roster, retool this roster. I don't want to say completely rebuild, because it was a really good season for them, but their head coach, Dave Odom, moved on to greener pastures, he would think, but they reloaded at the head coaching spot, and that's Dan Mullen and UNLV as they had a nice pickup, I would say, from a body type standpoint, D, as they added former Florida and LSU defensive lineman Jalen Lee to the roster, reuniting with Dan Mullen, who recruited him out of high school to Florida years ago. This is a 4-star recruit coming out of high school in 2020. 2020, man. So this is a guy who's been around for a while on the interior defensive line. Didn't play all that much, or I should say, didn't really rack up too many stats at LSU over the last 2 years. Only played in 11 games and only had 2 tackles. So limited opportunities for him there. We understand that LSU keeps a pretty loaded defensive line, but coming to UNLV, fresh opportunity for him. Seemingly with a lot of guys leaving defensively there, an opportunity for him to come in and be one of the leaders on a defensive line that needs some size in there.
Yeah, our guy, Sergeant Moore, our resident UNLV fan, he knows we love talking about this program. We find it so fascinating. He's saying Mullen's bringing a lot of SEC talent. He's killing it. I think that's really what this is about. We talked about it with prior acquisitions, right? That, just recently adding guys from the SEC. That's what Mullen has been doing in this class. A guy like Jalen Lee, 6'3", 296. He has that body type, a 4-star from Baton Rouge originally. Of course, 2020 feels like a lifetime ago. There's a physically mature SEC body type that you're now bringing in to a different level of play who can thrive. It just needs to be on the field. You're not going to recruit a Jalen Lee out of high school if you're UNLV, at least not at this stage of your program. So getting those guys not only from other schools in the portal, but you're getting them fully developed, right? They're at their peak age. They've been in the weight room, a high quality SEC weight room for a long time, and you're bringing them in. So this just going through the class for UNLV, you are seeing nothing but big school players, guys that Mullen recruited back when he was at Florida. Of course, this is a Florida player. That he
signed. He knows the character.
He knows
on top of the athlete.
He knows the body types he wants. But just, you go ahead and look at this. So Ben Chrisman, Kentucky, big offensive lineman. Alex Orji from Michigan, so not SEC, but Big Ten, probably the best conference going right now. Jake Pope, safety, we did a long video on him, coming from Georgia, originally from Alabama, right? You look at a guy like Varkeas Gums, tight end from Arkansas. Nick Elsness, South Carolina. JoJo Earl from Texas Christian, but originally from Alabama. Jalen Glover, a guy from Florida, not the University of Florida, but from the state of Florida, and was productive at Utah. These are guys from areas and schools that he's familiar with, and he's saying, look, let me get the talent from the portal with the body types of these big-time schools. Obviously, they had enough physically in their bodies to get recruited to these schools at one point. Let me bring them in. Let me coach them up. Mullen's a guy that had Mississippi State #1 in the country. He's one of the best football coaches in terms of on the field in the country. His weakness is recruiting at the highest level. But here, when you can get guys like this in the portal at a lower level of competition, he can do great things as long as he coaches them up. I think this is in line with what you've seen Mullen doing time after time after time again. This is the blueprint, man. This is what he does. So, no surprise getting a player like this to UNLV.
D, I get on you about the, jumbling of names. I said Dave Odom, not Barry Odom. Dave Odom is a basketball coach. So Barry Odom, of course, former UNLV coach in the beginning of the segment here. I said I mixed that up. So he's at Purdue now, but again, excited about what Coach Mullen's building here.
Yeah, we'll get some comments on that. Appreciate you, Rory Blake. Spike the likes, guys. Like and subscribe. We appreciate everybody. A lot of people on the live today enjoying join the chat, man. Chat's hot right now. A lot of stuff going on. Listen, we're gonna be doing this every day. It'll carry you right through to spring, and spring will be here before you know it. And by the way, when spring's happening, we're going to be telling you who's showing out in all these schools. That's going to be a major part of what we do in our spring coverage.
Canes Cats C305 said they should have gotten a guy like A.J. Allen. They got the kid from Utah that we did a video on. I forget the name off the top of my head.
Jalen Glover.
Yeah, he's a good get
from Lakeland, Florida.
Yeah, so he's got some pop. A shorter, stouter back, but he's got some burst, man. Really like him. So LSU, they lost Jalen Lee, a guy who hadn't played much over there, but they just added a couple more here, one on each side of the ball. The first one, Tamarcus Cooley, as you see here on the right of the graphic, was one of the most highly coveted defensive backs in the portal out of NC State. NC State, a lot of movement from their portal wise, as they lost their defensive coordinator to Marshall as he took the head coaching job there. But Tamarcus Cooley, NC State, and then Texas A&M tight end Donovan Green. He's dealt with some injuries the last few years, but you're betting still on the upside there at the position. D, you and I were talking before the show. He reminded me a little bit body type wise, but the injuries of Miami tight end Elijah Arroyo, who pretty much had a couple seasons wiped out where he wasn't 100% or anywhere near it, missed a whole season and had another year where he was not healthy. And now he could be a first-round pick. So we talked about it yesterday, the tight end spot, man. Some of these guys just get buried in a depth chart. They get hurt, but they're such unique athletes that you're going to take chances on them.
Yeah, and look, just starting with the defensive backfield here and Tamarcus Cooley, LSU has always been known for defensive backs. Coach Raymond, this is what they do. It's been such a step back in recent years in the secondary that they are not only trying to solve it through recruiting, guys like DJ Pickett, they signed a bevy of really, really talented defensive backs this year. You're also adding in the portal proven guys who still have some upside. Of course, Jakeem Jackson, who we know here from Florida. He goes to the University of Florida, follows Corey Raymond, then to LSU now, somebody with starting experience, but also very much upside, long, lean, athletic quarter. Mansour Delane, much more proven quarterback from Virginia Tech. He was an NFL guy going into the year, goes to LSU to rebuild his stock. A lot of talent there. Now you add Tamarcus Cooley. And this is a guy who played a lot for NC State, did a lot of different things. Quote from Coach Doran on him. He said he's in the box, he's setting edges, he's fitting the run, having a number of pass breakups and coverage, big interception, good job fitting formations and surface areas, very good communication-wise, young guy managing all that. It's impressive. So kind of a do-it-all guy for Coach Raymond, a proven player who can help this secondary speed up its development because they just need a lot of work to get to where LSU needs to be. You're seeing it in recruiting, but you're also seeing it in the portal with three guys in Cooley, in Delane, in Jakeem Jackson with a lot of experience and talent in that secondary. So excited to see what the secondary does. You mentioned Donovan Green. I thought the Elijah Arroyo comparison, another Texas guy, was very, very spot on. Elijah Arroyo emerged as probably one of the top 3-4 tight ends in the country this year. Going to be drafted very high, playing in the Senior Bowl. He did not have very much production. He actually had less production probably going into this year than Green's had in his injury-laden career. But once he got healthy and he got the opportunity, the talent took over. Donovan Green, remember watching him very closely in high school. This is a big, big, big athlete, basketball player. Got a lot of speed, can get downfield for someone that has, he's 6'4", 265. Is pretty big size. This guy's not your 245-pound oversized receiver. This is a big physical guy that can play in line but has receiving ability. You lose Mason Taylor. I saw Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl today say that Mason Taylor might end up being the first overall tight end selected. This is Jim Nagy head of the Senior Bowl over Tyler Warren, over Loveland, over Arroyo. They're saying Taylor could be the number one. That's a lot to replace. I think Donovan Green gives you some of that receiving ability, plus maybe a little more pure size and inline power.
And yeah, I just looked it up. The Elijah Arroyo in his 3 seasons that he had played before this year had 11 catches. Donovan Green in 2022 alone had 22 receptions. So he did have more production than him. And again, got to be healthy here, but hopefully that's the case for him at LSU.
That's it. It's going to be, look, LSU's class, and I'm just pulling it up now. When you look at what they've done in totality, it's not like Oregon where you're having, the best of the best at every position and you're only getting 9 guys. It is certainly much more of a, volume approach, 16 transfers, but you're seeing it with interior linemen, Josh Thompson, Braylon Moore. Those guys are going to be physical, get your running game more physical. We already mentioned the overhaul of the secondary. Sider Mitchell getting some size inside at defensive tackle. Patrick Payton, one of the top-ranked players overall in the portal. I believe last I saw he was the 3rd-ranked player in the portal overall. Guy with NFL upside, pass rusher, length. Put him up with Harold Perkins. Now you got a group of some athletic pass rushers. Nick Anderson, big, athletic, super talented young receiver from Oklahoma. That situation's a mess. Goes to LSU, playing with Garrett Nussmeier, a chance to really emerge in what's become the best wide receiver program in the country at Louisiana State. Jack Pyburn, we love what he can do as far as being a physical presence on the edge. coming from Florida, Van Buren as maybe your quarterback of the future coming from Mississippi State, a young guy to play behind Nussmeier. And then, of course, that receiver, we've talked about it a bunch, with the Berrien Browns of the world, and Nick Anderson, different kinds of receivers who can help their passing game get more explosive. Really like what LSU's done in terms of building a whole team while still having returning players like Nussmeier, returning players like Perkins, and some young blue chip talent. The recruiting class was ranked 7th in the country. DJ Pickett, Harlan Berry's going to come in there and run the ball right away. Solomon Thomas, really big physical interior lineman. So you see it all come together. It's going to be all about, can this team play complete football instead of just being so reliant on the passing game?
So we're going to talk about a real veteran in college football here, and that's Tru Edwards, who was one of the best receivers in the country this past year at Louisiana Tech, and he's headed to Kentucky, seemingly I would say replacing Dane Key, who's on his way to Nebraska, going to be paired up there with Dylan Raiola at quarterback. But this Tru Edwards, man, just looking at this guy's path to getting to where he is today. So he spent his first 3 years at JUCO and Hawaii. So he's from Texas originally, played football, ran track, only had 27 receptions and 3 touchdowns his senior year. He only played 1 year of varsity football. So goes to JUCO, Hawaii, doesn't really put up huge numbers at Hawaii, ends up at Louisiana Tech, which is where his dad played. And his father, Troy Edwards, was the 1998 Bolitnikoff Award winner, right? So comes from good stock. As a redshirt senior in 2023, yes, as a redshirt senior in 2023, had a solid year, but then really broke out big time this season, where he had, a massive year by the numbers, 84 receptions, 986 yards. So a guy who had a breakout season. He's 23 years old, so he'll play next year at 24 years old. But a veteran coming to the SEC for Kentucky, this is a big pickup.
First team all Conference USA. Kentucky's lost a lot of receiver, right? You lose, Dane Key to Nebraska, lose Berrien Brown to LSU. You got to rebuild that room. Also, kind of underrated one, losing Harley Gilmore also to Nebraska. So that's a young guy you were counting on. So this is not a young guy. This is one of the older players in the SEC, but someone who's a late bloomer. You're getting him a peak as an all-conference player. 6'3", 201. Watching him on tape, you see him against NC State, just bouncing off tackles, going 71 yards, just showing the strength and physicality, but also some long speed. He was a hurdler in high school. You look at his hurdling numbers. He finished 8th in the state of Texas, high-level Texas track, 14.33 in the 110 hurdles. And you see him when he gets striding. He's really got some giddy up. Definitely a long strider, but when he gets moving, he can go, and he's strong, so he can break tackles as well. If you're Kentucky, a lot of change in your passing game. I mean, Brock Vandergriff retires, and you lose your top 2 receivers. But this is someone who can bring you some experience, bring you some upside, and he's not as experienced for his age as other players his age. Now at this point, entering his 7th year of college.
7th year, yeah.
He's got experience.
And again, he's getting this year because of the Diego Pavia ruling. So, you basically get another year now if you played in JUCO.
Yeah, and look, this is a guy who he needed it, right? Because he was a raw player. So other guys might have developed earlier because they're playing so much in high school, et cetera. So this guy was not playing as much. So his development's been in college. So now you're getting him as really a true veteran player with experience that knows how he's effective on the field, knows what he needs to do. Kentucky, man, they're always kind of right there as being a team with a lot of NFL talent, but a team that struggles to consistently generate offense and compete consistently at the SEC level, at the highest levels of the SEC, despite having usually some major talents on hand. You weren't a great passing offense to begin with, but you lose your top 2 receivers, your quarterback retires. A lot of rebuilding in the passing game. This will help.
So we'll wrap things up today talking about one of the top recruits in the country for next year's recruiting class, and that's Zion Elee. He's currently committed to Maryland, but it looks like that recruitment's far from over, and that's what you're going to get with a guy who's as elite as Zion Elee. He's going to be visiting Auburn soon. 247 Sports has him as the number 2 player in the country, but they called him a few months back here in one of their scouting reports. They called him one of the more complete edge prospects in recent memory.
Yeah, this is a guy I saw in the Under Armour All-America game, which now they're allowing juniors to play. So he's going against, in some cases, senior offensive linemen, in some cases, the top juniors. He looked outstanding. When he went against Micah Morris, who's another player in that 26 class, a top tackle, I mean, he made him look absolutely silly. This is a guy who, depending where you look, 247's got on number 2. I think composite-wise, he's number 13. He's a consensus 5-star player from an area in Baltimore, Maryland, that's been producing top edge rushers, just that whole DMV area, right? If you take it all as a whole, Dylan Stewart, as good as it gets as a true freshman, Chop Robinson, you see what he's doing there for the Miami Dolphins. So this is an area that's producing a lot of edge rush talent. Zion Elee, what jumps out to me, he's listed at 6'4", 220. I think that's a verified measurement. He didn't look overpowering when you saw him in the field with the other All-Americans, but it was the motor, it was the bend, it was the fluidity that stood out. But you look at Auburn. Auburn's a team that has been recruiting at an extremely high level relative to their on-field performance the last couple classes. Landed a guy in Jared Smith, who's an outstanding edge rush prospect, bigger player than Zion Elee, maybe not as polished. But look, in terms of what they've been doing in Baltimore, right? So just some background. So Zion Elee goes to St. Francis, one of the biggest schools in the country, one of the best programs in the country out of Baltimore. Blake Woodby, Bryce Dees, Darian Smith, defensive players, all signed with Auburn in the 2025 class from this area, from the school. So then you also have Wayne Henry, who's in the 26 class, committed to Auburn. And you have Tru Edwards, who is the number 3 safety in this 26 class, also visiting. So Auburn's trying to build a pipeline here, and the prize of that class is Zion Elee. Look, maybe he wants to stay home in Maryland. It's that he's got his mind set on it, but take a shot. You never know when all your teammates kind of get together and say, "Hey, this is how we're gonna take over college football." It's interesting going from Baltimore, Maryland to Auburn, Alabama, but it's all about momentum. Once that becomes the pipeline, it's easier to get the next one because the path has been proven.
Man, I feel bad for some of these high school tackles. He freezes some of these guys up completely. It's crazy to watch, and it's good competition as well.
Oh, these guys play everybody. But again, it's amazing. Just again, I'm going through. I couldn't believe it when I actually looked at it. But yeah, 3 guys last year, 1 guy committed this year, and then on top of those 4 going to Auburn, you have Zion Elee and Tru Edwards, 2 blue chip, top of the board type players on that visit. So this is a significant number of players leaving the area, going past Penn State, right, past Ohio State, past Maryland, past Virginia Tech, past some of the schools that traditionally recruit that area, all the way to the Plains down there at Auburn, Alabama. We'll see how this develops. Auburn did a tremendous job of keeping Alabama players home in the last class, really squeezing out, the University of Alabama when it came to in-state talent. Auburn just took Alabama to the woodshed in that department. But now you're also seeing Auburn branch out and go elsewhere. Can they flip Zion Elee? He was very vocal about he wanted to stay home at Maryland. Malik Washington, very, very talented dual threat quarterback, basketball player. He also played in the Under Armour All-American game, committed to Maryland for the 25 class. They're trying to build something, kind of a hometown thing over there. Can Zion Elee be pried from that situation to play with his teammates on the Plains? This is a recruiting battle to keep a very, very close eye on.
Appreciate everyone who's been on live with us watching this show, man. Great numbers today. So we appreciate that and love the comments, love the questions, the discussion that, you guys are welcome to join if you have not already.
And a question from Stephen Moore here. Are you planning to cover spring leagues football? If you're talking about the spring football for the college football programs, absolutely we'll be covering spring practice for everybody all spring. So when guys are stepping up, position battles, injuries, God forbid not, hopefully there's not too many, but whatever happens in spring practice that's major news from all across the country, we'll be reporting it on Group Chat Football Live. So like and subscribe.
All right, guys. See you tomorrow. And like Dee said, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all.
See you tomorrow.